You know, there was, I don't know if you know this, I'm sure most of you do. Once bills, as far as currency, is used for quite a bit, it goes, the banks take it in and send it to the Federal Reserve and destroy it. Well, there was a couple of bills, a 1 and a 20, that just got to the Federal Reserve. And they're going down the conveyor belt, and the 20 starts talking to the 1 and said, you know what, I've had a great life. I've been to a lot of places. I've been to Las Vegas. I've been to New York City, the finest restaurants there. I've even been to other countries and came back to the United States. It's been a wonderful life. What about you? What have you done? And the $1 bill said, well, I've been to the Methodist church. I've been to the Baptist church. I've been to the Episcopal church. And the $20 bill says, stop, wait. What's your church? I want to tell you a little bit of history about that. That joke is a very old joke that I've never told in the Unity Church because Unity folks, enough said. Anyway, let's say our statements of truth together, please. I am a child of God. I am deserving of good in my life. I am accepting my good now. Well, I hope that all of this is going to be appropriate, of course, the joke along with it, because I hope you made it through tax time okay. Last week was April 15th, and even though a lot of people get to receive something, a lot of us don't. And so, you know, when I think of April 15th, I have to think of my brother because it's his birthday. And so when I'm sealing that letter with a check in it, I always think of my brother, and I bless the offering that I make into the government, and you know that it's going to go for good roads, good schools, a lot of good. So that's what I always bless it for and send it for, and it usually works. So today, though, I want to know how many people read the newsletter or whatever and heard the title of today's lesson. Okay, a few. That's good. Those of you that did and came anyway, I'm so glad. Because when we talk about money, especially in the Unity Church, boy, do they scatter, don't they? So anyway, for those of you who don't know, the title of today's lesson is For the Love of Money. And that can be said in so many different ways, can't it? Yes. For the love of money. Or for the love of money. It can be said a lot of different ways as we say a lot of different things and emphasize different words in what we're saying. But there's obviously some points that I would like us to take from today's lesson, and the most important one for me is how we look at money and what we think of it, what our intention of it is behind, and what our attitude toward it is. Of course, this is a church, even though it's a Unity church, we're going to start with the Bible, and a quote from the Bible. And from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 5, verse 10, it states this: whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This, too, is meaningless. Now, Ecclesiastes is a really interesting book. It's a great book. It was written by then King David. You remember King David? David, the little boy who slingshot killed Goliath and everything. He became king. And it was written by him. And the whole book is about him questioning what life is about. Him questioning whether doing good gets you any further along than doing something else. Him questioning almost everything in life. And the funny thing about it is, I recommend it for anybody to read the whole book, because the funny thing about it is that we have those same questions nowadays. So David, though, what he failed to realize, and if you want to start coming to Bible study on Wednesday night, you can learn this, that the Bible is actually a whole long, from the Hebrew text all the way through that, and then through Jesus' teachings and Paul's teachings, all the way through the whole Bible. It's a teaching and a showing of humanity's consciousness growing. And the thing when David wrote Ecclesiastes, he failed to realize is that he's growing in his understanding. He hasn't got to a spiritual understanding yet, but he is growing in his physical understanding. And here's the most, I do want to tell you this isn't part of today's lesson, but I do want to tell you what was so important about David and why he had to be in the Bible. David was the first human ruler, had control over other people to show empathy, to show compassion. All of the rulers before him, if they thought anybody was going to threaten them in any way, they'd be killed. David didn't kill everybody. That was what was so important about him. It sounds odd to us now, but there's still some people in the world that think that way. If you don't believe the way I do, if you don't agree with me, then you should be dead. That was the thinking before David. But David was the first ruler that said, no, we don't have to kill everybody. So I recommend the whole book to you if you have the time and would like to learn more about all sorts of questions that you may have in life. Now, even though we have the same questions 2,100 years later, it does not mean that nothing has changed in those 2,100 years. What it does mean is that there are some answers, though, that we as a race consciousness are still struggling with. That we have not risen in our consciousness high enough yet to see the answer. And you can see that on the nightly news everywhere. I mean, we just talked about before David's consciousness. We see, I watch the news even in the morning. I watch a lot of news, and this morning I saw about how some people in Atlanta were shot overnight. And we have wars still. All that stuff still going on. And it's an important book from the Bible, even though it's not always quoted from and looked at from a lot of different services or lessons. You'll recognize a song today that Jez is going to do, and it's directly from the book. So the whole Bible being a testament of us raising in our consciousness, we have to know, if that is so, then we have to think 2,100 years later. I hope that we've risen in consciousness more, which I know we have. Otherwise, unity wouldn't exist, I know. But back to the verse. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. Of course, we all have learned many times in church lessons, no matter where you're going to, that one of the key components of this verse and many verses about money in the Bible is the idea of loving it. As long as we don't love money, then we can have whatever we need, a lot of people will say. And that's true to a certain extent. But how do we do this? This is important. I think we all will agree that it's nice to have money in our pocket, in our bank account, and some socked away for the future. Doesn't everybody want that? Doesn't everybody want that? I think that we all want that. But why do we want that is important. We'll all agree that it's nice to have it. Well, believe it or not, if we are wanting it for those reasons, to save some, sock some away for a rainy day, to put it in for a future, doggone it, that's loving money. And don't misunderstand me. It's not wrong for us to have those things. Putting away money for a so-called rainy day is fine. But the way in which we put it away is very important. And rainy day, I'm just using the quotes. I'm not saying put it away thinking there's going to be a rainy day. So how we earned the money and our intention when we saved it is important for us to realize to move forward in consciousness. So let me ask a question of everybody here today. How many of us have ever borrowed money? Whether it be from a bank or from everybody. Has everybody borrowed money? Oh, gosh. Well, hey, you too. I was hoping you weren't old enough to. And that includes layaway, which sometimes charges interest, and doesn't, and it's not the same. Pawning something, borrowing from relatives or friends. Most of us have done that. Having the ability to borrow, though, is one of the ways that this country has become one of the greatest lands on earth for opportunity. So it's not a bad thing necessarily. Yet when we borrow money, what exactly are most of us doing? We're adding to stress to our life, aren't we? We stress about that silly stuff. And we're enslaving ourselves to some company that does not have a face or attachment to any of our sense of self-worth. So we lower our self-worth. We kind of give some of our self-worth to that person or that company because we owe them money. We got to get away from that to begin with. But what's most important is not to think about who we owe money and if we have borrowed money. What most important is to spend our time is a closer relationship to God. In other words, if we're separating our time, our focus on spending our money to pay back somebody and our relationship with God, we're serving two gods. We're serving two masters. And for us to grow in our spiritual awareness, we cannot separate our focus. So if we get ourselves in a deep hole of indebtedness, and we are saving money, then we are serving money because we are focusing on getting out of indebtedness. And most of our time is spent on that instead of our spiritual awareness, our spiritual awakening. From Matthew 6:24, you've all heard, no one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. In this instance, we would be using our time, we would be loving the money and serving it. And would be devoting all our time to taking care of the indebtedness. Or even just building the bank account. You don't have to be indebted to do this. But we cannot expect to live a life and expect to gain the advantages of being a spiritually minded person and reap the rewards that God has for us if we don't devote only a little bit of time to it. What we focus on, what we center our thoughts on, is what we will get in return. And that is the law of mind action. But also it's been twisted, as I've told you before, into the law of attraction, which means, yes, I can focus my time and my efforts on money, and I will get money. You can't do that. But when you get all the money you want in the world, when you think you finally got enough, which that will never be according to Ecclesiastes, when you think you've got all the money in the world, you won't have anybody or anything to spend it on because nobody really cares about you by that time, if that's what your focus is. And it's not their fault, and it can change immediately for you. So the law of mind action is different than the law of attraction. The law of mind action is focusing on who and what you are as a spiritual being. So to experience the fullness and the fulfillment in all areas of our life, we must grow in our consciousness and our spirituality. In order to grow in our conscious spirituality, we cannot focus on anything in the material. Now, I'm using money as an example because in the Western society, money's a big deal. And we all agree that we'd like to have some. In order to grow, though, we have to not focus on anything in the material. We have been taught an untruth here because we see with our human eyes that people, what they focus on comes to manifestation. But in order to live a full life, in order to gain the riches that God has for each one of us, we must focus with our third eye, which is our spiritual eye, from our Christness. God wants you to have it all. Money, relationships, joy of every kind, whatever you desire, God has it for you. The universe says yes to you. But that doesn't mean as you step outside these doors that it might all come to you right now. That might. If you're totally spiritually focused, if you have awakening here at this church sanctuary today, I hope every one of you goes out there and there's $1 million inside each one of your cars just to get you started. I really do. And it is. It is there. But how do we manifest it? Do we manifest it focusing on the $1 million? Or do we manifest it by knowing what's inside of us, that God is our source? And God is unlimited in every way. Every way. So there's some things that we have to do. We have to realize whether, when we're going through our day, has our thoughts been, are they coming from a God concept? Or is the thought that we got taking its own, adding our personality to it and shaping it into something that's going to benefit us from our ego sense? When we get our thoughts in alignment with God, then good begins to flow into our life from all areas. We have all the money we need. We have that savings account full. We have a retirement fund set up and well funded. But it is not for the reasons that the money has appeared to have those things. That's not the reason the money appeared. The money has appeared because we are focused on how we can live a more Christ-centered life. I saw something this morning or sometime, I don't remember when. Heck, I may have saw it in my mind. I don't remember where. But we even get stuck today and say to ourselves, a lot of times I hear a lot of Unity people say this too, I just want to live like Jesus lived. And don't jump on them yet. I mean, that's cool and everything, but it's 2,100 years later. You, believe it or not, can do and should be doing better than Jesus. And I don't know if you've ever noticed it or not, but become aware of these things as we go forward. Notice the blessings that you are to others. Notice how you have healed others. Notice all the blessings that they are receiving from you. Because you are worth unlimited amounts. The Christ in you wants to live through you. The idea of charity, too, has gotten kind of mixed up because, there was my grandfather used to say, charity begins in the home. And that's correct. But it's not the kind of charity that we have defined in the dictionary, because the dictionary says that the idea of charity is helping someone in need. The truth of humanity is that we all are in need of nothing except an understanding of our spiritual nature, which is already within us. We have all the answers within us. When we get clarity on our relationship with God, we get clarity in life. And when we have clarity in life, we can better understand what Paul wrote to Timothy in his first letter when he conveyed this. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant or to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. That coming age, again, Paul was growing in his consciousness. That coming age is here, though. It was there when Paul said it, too, but he didn't realize it either. That coming age is here, right now. Today we have the opportunity to get clarity about what we are putting first in our life and how that focus is working in our life. Money is just one tool. It's just one tool that we can use to gauge our spiritual understanding. And if we are open to receiving the gifts that God has for us, that are there for us at all times, doesn't make a difference where you are right now. Open yourself up to those gifts. Do not worry about what you've done in the past. in the blink of an eye, those blessings can come to you. But I have some homework for you. I don't usually assign you homework, so I expect everybody to have it done. These are easy, I think. And if you have trouble during the week, call me. Oh, you got them all up there. Okay. Number 1, pray about opening yourself up to more of God's blessings. 2, make a conscious effort with the tool of money to pay off anyone you owe. 3, notice the thoughts you are thinking about every aspect of your life. Is it a God thought? Or is it something that's come from my subconsciousness, some trigger that was tripped that is making me unhappy? 4, begin to make a concentrated effort to give consistently to this church, working your way up to a complete tithe of 10% of your gross income. And some people get stuck on that. You know, it's been a contention for some people for a long time. We're not the first. I mean, if you are one of these people, and you're not the first by it. It's been generations going on. But think about number 2. Make a conscious effort to pay off everyone you owe. What if you didn't know anybody right this second? And hopefully you're in that situation. But if you didn't know anybody right this second, a tithe would be nothing to you, wouldn't it? And you're going to benefit greatly from it, I guarantee it. Number 5, in meditation, see yourself as God sees you. Free, no chains binding you, and doing things that you have only dreamed of before. This is where you can get caught up in the law of attraction and the law of mind action, getting confused. But if we're coming from a spiritual base, if we're coming from the truth of who we are, from our Christedness, then you're going to have all sorts of blessings. That cruise, that Mediterranean junket, whatever it is that you've dreamed of, is yours. Without any trouble, without any financial problems occurring from it. Number 6, live in an understanding that God is your abundant supplier of unlimited good. You know, we get stuck here too. How do we get stuck here? We think, well, trying to think somebody local instead of somebody, you probably know these people, but they were local to me when we were in Wichita, Kansas. The Koch brothers. They have a lot of money. You know what? They've earned a lot of money. They weren't near that rich, a few years ago. But anyway, we have to look at somebody that has a lot of money and not say, I wish I had some of that money. They don't deserve all that money. We do that sometimes, don't we? I don't care if you agree with them politically or not. Whoever it is, George Soros on the other end, whoever it is, we can't look at people like that. That's not a God idea. Because what is that doing? That's saying that God's resources are limited. They've got $4 billion and there's only $5 billion in the world, so look at all these people. That isn't the way it is. You know that little joke I told you before? The reason they get rid of that money is because those presses are running. They're running all the time. They keep printing that money. It's not like that goes out of circulation, that's it. There's a new one right behind it. It's already been put in circulation. You are not limited in any way, no matter what anybody else has or does. You are not limited, period. That is a God fact. Don't put yourself in a situation where you think that someone has more than you and you despise them for that reason, because they don't. I want us to think of money. I want us to be clear on this money idea. Think of money, like I said, as a tool, because it is a spiritual tool. Think of it like a hammer. Now we're going to build this building here within the next few months. We're going to need a few hammers, aren't we? We're going to have hammers. We're not going to be able to build this building without hammers, are we? We cannot do it without hammers. But the hammer isn't going to help us when we put the doorknobs on, is it? The hammer's not going to help us when we put the handles on the new cabinets in the kitchen, is it? The handle is not going to help us when we're pouring the concrete. We can't use the hammer for that. The hammer is one tool. There's a lot of tools that we're going to need for this. There's a lot of tools that you have in your toolbox, in your spiritual toolbox. And understanding that we can use them at any time is important. So we have to facilitate in our own mind the idea that I've got many tools. If I'm loaded down with debt right now, I can work on that slowly with the tool of money. But I can use my other tools to expand on my spiritual awareness because I have them more available. So whatever it is you have in your toolbox, use it. We have to realize that money is just a hammer. Money is the only tool to get us where we are going when we are thinking about money. But we can't think about it as loving it and admiring it and worshiping it. We have to have a grander understanding of who and what we are as a spiritual being. Let this day be the first day that we all get that grander understanding of all the tools in our toolbox. And we know that we can use them at any time to help us on our own spiritual journey. And let us realize right now that our toolbox is always full. God is blessing you now. Amen.